And here we go. Webinar is on. It'll take a few moments for people to start flowing in. All right, it's Wednesday, November 17th. It's almost Thanksgiving. It's almost Christmas. 2021 is almost gone. Unbelievable. Time flies when you're having fun. Today we have an amazing show. Again, we have a great guest. Unfortunately, John Butler is MIA today due to some bug flu, and we hope that he will recover soon. In the meantime, to get us started, see if we can play some studio music. Let's see if this works out for me. Let me turn my volume all the way up, and here we go. All right. Here we are. So Llewelyn, I want to jump into markets trading sideways. COVID seems to be under control. Obviously, we have to remain zealous and watchful. But I want to get into what's your take on the stimulus bill, $1 trillion plus. Lots of money there for the power grid, 65 billion, 65 billion for a high speed internet, 7.5 billion for EV charging, 42 billion for airports, 50 billion for weatherization. I mean, it is a significant, very significant. What is your take on what is this going to do to digitalization and what we watch on smart cities, smart buildings, smart utilities, and the like?
Well, it's a very good thing. I'd like to say that I think it's way overdue that we've allowed our infrastructure to deteriorate. We've postponed maintaining it, let alone being innovative with it. When I came to the United States in 1963, it had one of the best infrastructures in the world. Things worked, traffic flowed. You could drive anywhere in a reasonable period of time. Since then, we've had a deterioration in the infrastructure pretty well across the board. Not absolutely everything. The airlines work very well, the airports less well, etc. It's uneven, but it's way overdue. As a nation, we spend too little on infrastructure. And if you propose that you build more infrastructure, the immediate reaction from some quarters is it'll cost too much, there'll be too much taxation. But the fact of the matter is, if you don't keep your infrastructure up, that is a tax. If you're stuck in traffic, that is a tax. If you can't get your goods from the ports, that is a tax. If your electricity goes out, that is a tax. Infrastructure is essential to productivity. And while various technological additions to our social, to our whole country have helped us to keep out front, in other areas we've fallen egregiously behind, and it is unlikely that we'll be able to magically catch up without these big expenditures. We are, by and large, an undertaxed country, but we will not recognize that politically. I've been through many discussions. Somewhere in a tax curve is a sweet spot. If you go above it, you begin to damage business. If you stay below it, you're damaging the whole country because you're not taking the revenues you need. I think the infrastructure bill is a very good thing. Now it comes down to the problem or the challenge of implementation, spending the money wisely, avoiding boondoggles, avoiding court cases, and all the mechanisms of delay which we have in this country.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm gonna say hi to Mar first, and I'm gonna introduce her, and then I'm gonna want her to chime in. Mar, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. I'm very happy to be here with friends, among friends. And
Excellent.
the party started.
Excellent. Well, for those of you that don't know Mar, you have been missing out. You know, Mar is an amazing human being. She's the VP of products at Anterix these days. And Anterix happens to be an amazing company and should tell us all the things that they're working on, but they are providers of 900 megahertz licensed spectrum and solutions on private LTE networks for mission critical customers. Prior to Anterix, Mar was a VP of products at Legato Networks, where I met her. And before that, she's had different roles, many companies, Senior Director of Product Management and Business Planning at K12, Senior Director of IT Customer Management at Nine Holdings, and VP of Business Development at 4DK Technologies, among others. She holds a BS in Electrical Engineering from the Universidad Politécnica de Catalunya in Spain. And that means that she's from Barcelona. And an MBA from Carnegie Mellon University and a certificate of leadership management from Georgetown University. Welcome, Mar.
Thank you very much.
So what's your take, Mar? I read a lot of money for infrastructure, but two big chunks that you kind of play in because of what you guys do in the customer base: electric utilities, electrification, and telecommunications. A significant number of that money is for broadband services of all kinds. So what's your take? What is going on in your, what are your advisors are telling you? How do you see this? Is this booming times? Is everything going to get fixed finally?
It's very much welcome. I think the utility industry should be very excited about this opportunity. For the longest time, they have made a lot of efforts, through the, traditional regulatory process to upgrade the infrastructure, right? This is very much welcome. That the bill also really puts money singled out for things like grid resiliency, cybersecurity, right, and flexibility on modernizing the smart grid. So I think it's going to be very, very positive, and we hope that this is going to help for us see the acceleration of all these efforts that we see that the utilities have been trying to do all along, right? But it takes a while for them to justify all these investments. And I fully agree with what Llewelyn has said, right? Hopefully, it's overdue, right? We know that, the times are changing, right? As a society, we have to be much more aware and have increased our sense of urgency around climate change, etc. All the utilities have been very forthcoming, right? All the utilities are putting very aggressive net carbon neutral goals, and they need to invest a lot of technology to get to those points. So all of this is very much welcome.
So tell us, dive a little deeper, Mar. Tell us for the audience, tell us again, what are some of the key problems that utilities have been having, and what is Anterix doing about it?
Very good. So, what Anterix is all about is bringing what we think is a capability that utilities have been seeking for the longest time, but until, I would say, last year in 2020, when the FCC came up with some amazing rulings, we're not able to do that, right? So what we need to do here is that the grid is becoming much more complex. Everything is going to be data-driven. And in order to do that, utilities need to have sensors and intelligent devices at the edge, right? That collect that data, and that data needs to be moved, needs to be processed, needs to be analyzed, and needs to be acted upon. And then, the data needs to be moved back to the edge devices to be moving and acting on the grid as they want. In order to do that, right, you need something that moves that data, and to do that, you need communications networks. Till now, right, traditionally, utilities have been doing that. Large investments on fiber, and fiber is very good for the transmission system. But when you need to get to the edge, and now that we see an increasing number of renewables, right, at a consumer level, and the distribution grid needs to become bidirectional, right? You cannot get fiber to all of these points. It's cost prohibitive. What utilities have been doing traditionally is to put wireless networks, but the only available tool for them was narrowband. Now, Anterix, we had Spectrum, right? Spectrum is the basis, is the foundation for wireless networks. We had a Spectrum that was narrowband, but understanding the need of the utilities, we partnered with them and went to the FCC asking for a rule changing on how this spectrum could be used. And the FCC had the foresight of understanding that it would be that the spectrum would be much better used if it could be used for broadband, right? So this is what we have. We are trying to enable the transformative power of broadband technologies for grid modernization, for the critical infrastructure of utilities, right? It's a long-winded answer, but I think we are here providing core capabilities to be able to make the grid more efficient, more reliable, more resilient, and more, very important, safer and more secure.
And can you share real quick who has signed up and who is working on it?
So it has been an amazing 18 months since we had the FCC ruling with broadband. We have already done tremendous progress. Ameren started last year by this time, I think a little bit before Christmas, they joined as the first customer right after we had SDG&E following them, also working with us to secure that spectrum for their grid modernization efforts. And then the last one to join the pack is Evergy. And what we see is that we have also 50 other utilities in the pipeline. We have 15 experimental licenses, which a lot of them are among utilities or entities that want to put and demonstrate the capabilities of this tool for utilities, like the CIEDAR consortiums at Texas State University, that we are proud founding members of that. And we see a lot of momentum. We see a lot of momentum coming into utilities really adopting private broadband as a tool in their toolbox to get to the
Mark, we're in a period where the utilities are under a lot of pressure. They're under pressure to improve their performance against bad weather, greater resilience, the ability to stay on in storms, not to have to rush out and take everything out of the refrigerator, buy batteries and stockpile water in the hopes the lights will stay on. They've got great pressure there. They have huge pressure, both from society and from government, to decarbonize, to change the ways historically that they've made electricity with coal and natural gas. They've lagged in electricity, so there's a lot of pressure on them. And yet this is the great age of digitization and, as you said, data. And somebody else said that data is the new oil. It seems to be more than that. It's the new electricity. How does Anterix, with their networks, help the flow of data and of resilience?
Yeah, so how we help is by bringing the I would say the connectivity fabric from the edge of the grid, right, starting with the meters, back to the NOC, right? So we, with our technology, with private LTE networks, right, that are powered by spectrum, licensed spectrum, we are going, utilities are going to have a platform, a communications platform that is their own, that they will control, and they will have the flexibility to connect as many devices as they please, right? From the meters to the transformers, to cap banks, to PVs, smart inverters, EV charging stations, everything that has an impact on the consumption or on the production of electricity in this new distributed environment can be now controlled by the utility. Till now, it was very expensive to do that because either you didn't have the technology to do it wirelessly, because narrowband technologies, right? It was a very thin pipe that didn't allow them to transfer the amount of data that you need, or you had to do fiber, right? Which it would be very expensive to bring at every device at the edge of the grid, right? I think the combination of fiber plus, what it's called a FAN, a field area network with broadband wireless communication is what they need to actually move this data back and forth. And, as you have what I call more eyes and ears at the edge of the network, you are able to control what happens, right? And if you can be able to control what happens, and you are able to act much more quickly in kind of this, at the energizing sector of the grid, rather than impacting a wide area of customers. So, by having much more situational awareness that it's provided by all these sensors in the network that carry data through the private broadband networks, right? You increase the resiliency of that network, right? Which is, the ultimate goal in what we are seeing, the increase of weather events and things like that.
How does a private network stand up in terms of cybersecurity? I've heard that it's superior, that it's less vulnerable, not that it's invulnerable, but that it's infinitely less vulnerable. Why is that, and how does that work?
Yeah, to start with, is because a private network, it's not connected to the internet, right? So if the majority of cyber attacks comes because the bad actors come through your networks, through, the main highway that we have put in place, which is the internet. What we are advocating is that these networks that are going to communicate with the operational technology that, that governs and manages and controls the critical infrastructure, they need to be air-gapped from that internet, right? So that's the main thing. Also, kind of by being private and being licensed, right? From a spectrum perspective, it's yours, it's private, nobody else can share it. If somebody else interferes with you, you have the right to complain, right? At the FCC, right? Legally, kind of, you are protected of interference from anybody else. And the good thing is that what we are advocating is that, the current wireless technology, it's secure. LTE per se, it has built in a lot of security features, right? We cannot say that, our AT&T or Verizon are not secure. They are secure, and they have large teams that are always monitoring for intrusions. But but by default, these networks are connected to the internet, right? This is what the consumers want. So, if you leverage the good things about the technology, but then you also bring kind of new measures like air gap from, these big doors where everybody can come in, this is what inherently makes these networks much more secure.
Yeah. Mark, some people would say, well, there are some unlicensed spectrum solutions on broadband, wireless, this and that. Why is 900 so different or powerful or important? And tell us about, it takes a village to get this whole thing going. And I know that you had there was an annual conference you guys are founding members of the UBBA. And so why 900? Why is 900 so much better than any other frequency for broadband in the ecosystem, perhaps? And then what's the UBBA about, and how are you building the village?
Absolutely. So 900 spectrum is very good because of the physics. We say that it's beachfront property, right? The characteristics of our spectrum is that we have ample capacity, right? It's 6 megahertz, which is good, but also it's in what it's called the low band, is below 1 gigahertz, and the spectrum below 1 gigahertz travel much farther than the mid band, like the CBRS in 3.5 or high band, right? When we get into the millimeters wave, right? So we believe that it's the best spectrum for utilities because it's the right balance of capacity and coverage, right? We have a decent big pipe that can travel very far. And the implication of that is that if you have this good spectrum, you don't need to put as much infrastructure on the ground, right? In order to radiate and provide coverage, you need to put cell towers, right, with electronics and antennas, etc. The shorter the spectrum travels, the more cell sites you need to put. And when you put cell sites, that means that it's additional operational cost and much more, operational complexity, right? So this is why, with our spectrum, we can get, 30 kilometers, cell radius, right? That with very few, depending of the territory, right? This is kind of
right.
in an ideal situation, flat, but by default, when you have something that travels much further, the amount of infrastructure will be much less, so it's much more cost effective. Right. And to your question about it takes a village, absolutely. Right. So when we started in this journey, now almost 6 years ago, because time travels and we think that with COVID we've been in the bubble, but we've been 2 years in this bubble. We realized that there was a big need to really educate the industry on the benefits of adopting a standard technology like LTE. And then what we did, we joined with the with the innovators in the industry, kind of the southern links that they had already made that move, as well as other infrastructure vendors, Nokia, Motorola, and Evergy also joined early on to create the Utility Broadband Alliance. The Utility Broadband Alliance, it's an independent trade organization where utilities and infrastructure and technology vendors, ranging from devices, technology, solutions, infrastructure, software, all gathered together to really learn about the needs that utility have from private broadband, and then come up and bring solutions to the market. Right? It's a hub of information sharing and education for utilities. We started, strong 2 years ago in DistribuTech, 2 years ago at 2019 with 8 members. It quickly grew to 35. With COVID, we have a little bit of hiatus, but last year by this time, we incorporated it as an independent organization, and now it has 54 members, and 12 of them are utilities, and it's growing in interest and very strong. We just had our first face-to-face summit. We gather, overall, 300 people, right? 200 something were, face-to-face in St. Louis, Missouri. Emeren was the host utility, and they did an amazing job on hosting us. And, it was very interesting. We also, 275 were, presential, and around 100 joined the online program. And, what it was very creative and very different from what it, I think this type of conference goes, is that we have a dual track. We had the thought leadership piece, where we had very interesting panels with, combination of utility executives, vendor executives, etc. But also we created a plug fest that for the first time we got the ecosystem bringing their technologies and demonstrating live that the use cases for utility work with this technology. Right? So we demonstrated a Fleaser type of application using many different devices from many different vendors as well. We did that with 4 different infrastructure vendors. We demonstrated kind of interoperability of all of that to show the utility that there is choice, that this is a very rich ecosystem, that this is not an investment on a private, proprietary technology that, they may get stranded if there is not enough market uptake. So that was extremely successful, very well received. ABBA did an amazing job, and we are continuing strong.
Yeah.
I understand, Ma, that the Southern company, the big Southern company, which is a real leader in the electric utility industry, has a broadband system and works with you, but is not in fact part of the Anterix system. Is that correct? It's
very correct, right? Southern Link has a legacy. They had a lot of foresight that they knew from the get-go that they had to invest in broadband for their grid, right? And they go back to the first network that they put together was an IDEN network. When IDEN, which is all Motorola technology, it was the one that actually Nextel used, right? And Nextel International used, that was phased out. They moved onto LTE, but they used that in their own spectrum. It's in 800, right? It's also beachfront property, has the same characteristics as 900, but they have already, and they are realizing of the benefits of investing in private broadband, and they really want the rest of the industry to take the same steps as they did and to follow the same journey, because even if it's a different band, right? If the ecosystem develops applications in private LTE, they can also benefit from that.
Mm-hmm. Is this a little bit, I wonder about interoperability between utilities that have a broadband system and those that don't. In Europe, NATO, which would seem a far stretch, but they have an interoperability problem that's been going on for more than 50 years. Their pilots can't speak to each other. They have different frequencies. Is there an interoperability problem potentially when some utilities are on private networks, broadband, and others have not taken the step that they need to take yet?
Well, absolutely. So interoperability, it's we can go deep, but what I would say is the more standardized you have your systems, the better, the easier it's to interoperate the different systems, right? So this is why we believe that with Anterix 900 there is a real opportunity to create this network of utility private broadband networks, right? Think big, right? Think in the future. If each utility, they will have their own private network, it's going to be fine. But if we extrapolate that and all of these networks could connect to each other, and personnel from one utility could go to another service territory and bring their devices, and they would very easily connect, that would be a great gain and benefit for everybody, right? You could apply that for emergency situations, mutual aid, and things like that. So also, right, by standardizing kind of the highways, now it's going to be much easier to also converge the data that traverses among that, right? And now you can not only think about your service territory play, you can think about regional or even national plays of how you can do demand response or EV charging type of things, right? Or transactive energy. So there are a lot of use cases that could be much easily achieved if everybody would standardize into the same platform.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Mark. What's your take on the partnership with Texas State CIEDAR and all the work there on the Smart Networks Lab and Smart Utilities Lab, Smart Energy Lab? What's your vision of what will that do for helping along the village journey.
No, absolutely. I think we are extremely excited to be part of that initiative, and thank you, Andres, for inviting us to be part of that. It's clear that Texas State, with their innovative approach to creating a space where the research, right, the research that comes from Texas State, plus the customers that are utilities, plus the industry, right, as one of technology company that brings it, putting all in the same place to really solve the problems that utilities have, right? For us, it's very appealing, kind of the roadmap that CIEDAR has put in place of starting demonstrating technology to educate in that case, the utilities on what are the possibilities that is going to trigger them to think around additional use cases that they will need to do, and then this partnership with Texas State to really develop new technology to solve the problems of utilities. So very excited. As you know, Texas State through CIEDAR has an experimental license. We are collaborating with you guys. We have brought the infrastructure, so now we can start testing existing use cases from more an educational perspective, but also starting to create new things, right? Let's listen to the utilities about what they need to solve first, and then let's develop that.
I'm actually excited that we just we launched this in August 30th with a demo, and over the last few weeks we have been working with LCRA and others to bootstrap an aggressive program where now we have a roadmap of 6 months of testing all the use cases. So 6 months from now, we will have an amazing report showing how all this stuff works, how well it works, how amazing it is, and what kind of challenges or things to be learned from. And so we're looking forward to helping with that journey, and also hopefully UBBA members and others will realize that we're here providing services in that way. I know that there are some members already in the CIEDAR ecosystem, Clear World and Easy Metering. They're really excited about working with you guys.
Absolutely. And so I think what I see that there is a lot of initiatives that are being created in the industry. All of them have a very important place, right? ABA is the confluence for education, information sharing, etc. Right? But there is not a place for experimentation. This is what I see CIEDAR going, and I could see that a very strong alliance there, right? That ABA will do a Plug Fest, which is going to be 4 days, once or twice a year, right? But there's a lot of learning and experimentation with the technology that should happen elsewhere. This is where I see CIEDAR playing a role. And then on the other hand, right, Anterix, understanding that, one of our mission is help utilities make the most on this investment on private LTE, right? We could take the easy approach, right, of being a spectrum flippers, and here we go, here you're a spectrum, and we go there. We are not that. We really are committed to make sure that these investments are not just properly utilized, but that they thrive with this investment. And this is why we created the Anterix Active Ecosystems. But as you say, it takes a village, and we want to make sure that when the utilities have these networks, now all the use cases that they want to put in place are ready to be loaded into these networks, right? So our Anterix Active Ecosystem, it really focuses on the development and the commercialization of solutions, right? From infrastructure to devices to the actual smart grid solutions
Mhm.
that on 900, right? So as soon as somebody wants to have a meter, that meter is already developed, right? Or that the meter company understand what it takes to adapt their existing technology to 900 priority.
Right.
So
Over the past year, two subjects have largely dominated our conversations on Wednesday afternoons. One, of course, is digitization and data as a force in society. And the other one has been 5G. But your system is LTE, which is basically 4G, long-term evolution, I believe it stands for. How does your system fit into a world of 5G?
no, the good thing is that, every investment in 5G today can be upgraded to 5G, right? And one of the things that we have realized is that 5G is very new. The ecosystem of devices is not all the way there, right? And utilities they don't like to be the guinea pigs of new technology. Let's the consumer, right, with all the new iPhones, test that piece. No, it's a joke, right? But the long term is 5G. In the here and today, they are much better off with 4G because there is a much more robust technology. It's proven. The ecosystem
it is the world standard, right?
It's the world standards, and now everybody is evolving to 5G. And utilities, when they invest in 4G, they will have also the option to upgrade to 5G. But let me tell you, right, when we talk about G, we are talking about all of the things. And 5G means mostly three different things. One is what it's called MEBB, which is, it's gigabits to the phone. It's massive broadband, right? And this is the first thing that all of the commercial carriers are deploying, right? To have high definition to your phone. But this is not, utilities don't need data going from the central location to the edge device. It's the other way around. They need the edge device to bring data, with a very low latency to the NOC, right? To the central location, right? So the first thing that everybody's pushing, that is, massive gigabits to the phone, that's 5G today. It's not there. The second part is machine type communications. And the third part is ultra low latency, ultra high reliability. These two pieces are very new in the standards, right? There is not real, as of now, they have just been standardized, right? The standard has been finished. And the only commercial technology that you can find is prototypes. So, I would not recommend that you put mission critical communications on technologies that have not been fully vetted, right? What we want to do and what, the partnerships that we are doing, right? This is something that we should be testing at CIEDAR, right? This is something that we should be working with the national labs, similar to what we have done with Endowed, right? That we brought private LTE to validate that it's the right technology for mission critical grid use cases, and Endowed, validated that in a high impact project that we started 2 years ago and that we just finished. We just announced the second phase results last week in a press release, right? So I would say 5G is part of the path. Let's make sure that we understand it well, we tune it well in the environments that are doing more R&D type. And then when we validate that it's all robust, that there are not any kinks, we cannot afford, agree to be a test, right? This is not software that you can just do another release every 2 days or every day, right? This is mission critical, so we will get there. We will get there. We have to do the homework to validate that it's well understood, is mature to the level that we can bring our most critical infrastructure to communicate with it.
Mark, clearly congratulations on all the journey so far. When I suspect that, there's a lot going on to finish the year, which is almost over. But what are the highlights, or what should we be looking for in 2022 from you guys, other than, signing more customers? What key activities or anything that is coming up in 2022 that should be, heads up?
Well, if I disclose the surprise, then I don't know if I can do that, right? you are like my daughter that she wants to do a Christmas before Christmas, right? It's like, no, it doesn't work that way.
Well, I am hoping. I'm hoping that the infrastructure.
I'm just joking. No, let me tell you.
Okay.
I just was teasing.
Just a couple of things.
No, I think what we are going to see increasing is building on the momentum of these three, customers that we said. We would see that, utilities jumping on private LTE will accelerate. So that's one. The second thing is that we are going to see extremely growth on the amount of use cases that will embrace these private LTE, right? As of now, if we look 2021, the use cases that we have seen are the gateways, right? Are the communication devices that attach to the big power devices. I can see that now private LTE will become available on meters, on line sensors, on devices that are where the communications network is embedded into these power devices. And what I can see is the industry, the customers, because we are seeing that evolution at ABA more and more. We are going to see the customer, right? The utilities driving the conversation about this network of networks, right? This is something that has been, we started, the utilities were bringing up the need for this network of networks in the ABA event. And I think that is another theme that we will see growing and evolving. And of course, one thing that now utilities are also paying a lot of attention, and where, private LTE, is one of the tools in the toolkit, right? Is rural broadband, right? I think we are going to see that, by them deploying private networks, private broadband for their own operations, they are going to realize that, they may be able to either enable or to get into kind of the rural broadband. A lot of these utilities have a lot of service territories that are underserved by the broadband carriers. And they, I think, have a societal duty to, the same way that they bring electricity, to bring broadband, right? It's as needed, right? It's the same kind of utility. Broadband or electricity becomes a utility for society. So I see that a big evolution on that as well.
Llewelyn?
Yes, going forward, can you give us a case example of where broadband would be very efficient, whether it is making a power plant more productive, or say during a wildfire? What would be the advantage if you have a private network available in an extreme situation?
Yeah, so when we talk about private LTE and private broadband, one thing is broadband, but the other thing that is critical characteristic of this this technology is low latency. So in
maybe Mark, could you explain that to us so that those who are less sophisticated?
Yes, when we talk about latency, that means that when the data is generated, it goes really fast back and forth between where it's created, collected, to where it needs to be analyzed, and the output of that analysis going back to that power device. And this is extremely important in situations like wildfires, because the majority of wildfires that we have seen created in California is when due to wind, etc. These lines break, and when they hit the ground, right, that creates the fire. And you have 1.4 seconds from these 30 feet that the line sit to hitting the ground, right, to prevent that line that it's energized, that there is electricity coming down, brings down and creates a short circuit and a spark, because there is a lot of voltage, sparks a fire, right? So there are utilities, right? There is one specific utility in California, SDG9E, working with SCL. This is, they have publicized this use case where they have technology that you are able to de-energize the line before it hits the ground. But in order to do that, you need to make sure that the processing of that data that it's collected when it breaks till it hits the ground is 1.4 seconds, right? All that processing is done. So, narrowband technology, the technology that they have deployed today does not allow to do that. A private LTE network will allow to do that, because you have a very fast and very fat pipe that allows this back and forth of information.
There's another instance, and that is arcing without a broken line.
Yep.
And will it work as well to detect and swiftly de-energize the line if arcing is detected?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yes, as I said, I'm a novice in the energy. My career has been in telecommunications, right? I call Andres my godfather in the energy sector. It's been like now 5 years, and I have a lot to learn still on the use cases, but absolutely, Llewelyn. And I'm sure that we are going to find many use cases where it can help in emergency situations, but it also can help in increasing the efficiency of the network. One of our Anterix active ecosystem partners is Line Vision, right? They have LiDAR technology to to see what is the physical status of the transmission lines, and through that, right? If it's it's cold or it's hot, right? The lines dilate or contract, and how you manage the electricity passing through that, it can be highly optimized, right? You need a network to do all of that, and they are embracing private LTE. These are all of these use cases that we should be able to onboard into this new connectivity platform.
Thank you. Going forward, and we have smart utilities, we're going to get all this money that's going to go into buttressing the utilities. Do you think some of it is going to come your way? It's going to speed up the rate at which LTE networks are going to be, private networks are going to be adopted? I don't know if it's going to come our way. What I really wish is that they are going to come into the way of building this private LTE, right? When we talk about private LTE, there is the spectrum, but there is the infrastructure, there is all the operation, there is all the devices and all the use cases. It's a large ecosystem that we need to all bring together. And my understanding is that there is part of that it's specifically devoted to enhance the communication part of the communications infrastructure of utilities, because it's the underpinning of the smart grid. If you cannot move the data, you will not be able to digitize and to make the grid smart. I was very excited on this broadcast when Ashad Mansour, the president of the Electric Power Research Institute, said that with data and data control and data mining and data and the ability to use it, we could increase the output from all of our generating sources without building anything new, including established dams. That's very exciting. It would seem to me that part of that data flow would require an Anterix system to move the data.
Yeah, yeah. I would say that you know, since many of us tried to figure this out a long time ago, that the distribution side of the grid without a affordable, secure network communication that has enough bandwidth and enough low latency to deliver these real-time use cases for grid optimization, grid safety, so on, that you know, the jury is out. The jury is out on utilities in America to get their act together and get serious about building out an end-to-end smart grid. The grid's smart to the substation with fiber communication, but it is blind for the most part from that substation to your house or to your office or to your hospital or to your school. And that's the piece that is critical, that it gets upgraded in this go around with the $65 billion. And a big chunk of that should be to make the communications investments needed to make that happen. So I look forward to seeing the 3,000 utilities signing up a deal with Anterix. I'm not so sure that Anterix can handle 3,000 customers in the next 12 months, but they would be happy to have them all.
Absolutely, absolutely, right? You know, we are here to serve. We are here to, you know, to contribute to make this society, you know, safer and you know, and smarter and more equitable for everybody and more just, right? And you know, electricity, it's basic for all of us. And you know, if we can do that in a way that we save the planet at the same time, right? We are all for it. And you know, it's being, you know, it's a very exciting journey. It's a very exciting journey to you know, to be from the inception of this transformation. And I'm sure that in the next 2 to 5 years, you know, we will see the fruits of all of the work of many people in the industry, you know, all us plowing along to get to this better future.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Mar, you know, I know that again, for the audience real quick, your spectrum is only in the United States, or is it North America? Is it going to be global someday? What are your thoughts?
It's the United States for now, you know. Puerto Rico is United States, so
okay.
So Puerto Rico and Alaska
Good.
and Hawaii, yes, and you know, you know, we don't see that, you know, being standardized across, right? Band 8, this 900 is used in the rest of the world by the operators, by commercial operators, but they, you know, in the rest of the world, they are carving out also spectrum to do this private LTE, right? And if you see kind of the issue with spectrum is that the devices need to speak that language, right? Devices need to speak 900 or 800 or 700 or 1.8, right? But if you see how the chipsets are doing more and more, you know, given the miniaturization, they are putting all the bands in the same chipset. So, you know, your phone, your iPhone has many bands. It works everywhere in the world, right? So, you know, we are going to get to a point that, you know, you may identify all these spectrum slices of private network, and we can gain a scale, right, to create all the devices that we need, you know, for critical infrastructure that could serve, you know, everywhere in the world.
Right.
So,
absolutely. Llewelyn?
Well, I wonder going forward as we get this high digitization, whether we can actually so depend on digitization and the flow of information that we may not have to build everything. This was a prospect which Ashad Mansour raised here on this program. And I wonder if you've looked at that, exactly what the savings to the utility can be in terms of kilowatts if they have an efficient communication system. Traditionally, utilities have believed in reserve margins and huge overcapacity in order to deal with their peaks, etc., or with any loss of generation. Can all that be shaved and made more efficient with broadband and with really good networks?
I would say absolutely yes. And here is where we need to work with the folks in the ecosystems, because we are just a piece of the puzzle, and we are part of an intelligent chain where we capture the data and move the data, others process the data, etc. So we are actually now working with the likes of the folks in our ecosystem, right? From the line visions to the easy meterings to the LNGs, etc., to really develop these options, and also, to your point, right, quantify the benefits of that, right? It's a long journey. We have Anterix per se. With Barnes and McDonald, we have developed a total cost of ownership. We measure some of these benefits from a dollar amount perspective. I don't think we have identified that from a kilowatt savings perspective. That is a very interesting thought, and I think you are I love the idea of challenging us to speak in that language. So thank you, Llewelyn.
Thank you. I've got an email here, and if it's all right, Andres, we've got somebody who's written into us, and if I could read that and then append a question of my own, because I think it's pertinent.
Go ahead.
Perhaps companies, it comes from Alison Wise, and it's addressed to all three of us. Perhaps companies like Anterix should form a sort of guild that services all utilities by mandate from regulators, that all utilities must participate in end-to-end smart grid infrastructure development in order to exist as corporate operating entities. And I would append this question: isn't that what you're sort of getting towards with what your chief executive, Robert Schwartz, has talked about as the network of networks?
Absolutely.
Without regulators that you may be getting there all by yourselves? Yeah. Maybe you could just explain the network of networks.
Yes. So, Anterix believes in capitalism, in the free market, right? And everything that is mandated, it creates a backlash. So our approach is, creating this industry momentum where all the companies that invest in private LTE become part of a larger entity in order to bring their networks and interconnect with their neighboring utilities, right? In order to create these, coast to coast, Uber network, right, of private utility and broadband networks. The idea is that all of them will keep their own identity as networks, because that is what they are investing. They want to control, they want the flexibility, they want to manage their own operations. But through a standard technology, being having the ability to interconnect and create, a supra, right, a highway on top of their own private highway that allows the flow of data across utilities, right? And there's going to be a lot of use cases, right, in the future that will require that. And we are, bringing that concept to the market. The utilities are embracing the concept, and the idea is that we want collectively to define what type of shape it needs to take, right? The technology is easy, it exists, it can be done, right? Now, we have to, think through what would be what I'm going to call kind of the structure and the governance, how we make it happen with every participant in the group.
I look forward to that vision.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Great question. Thank you.
Absolutely. And in the meantime, if any of you listening need test cases proven in a very reliable place where many cities and utilities are participating, Texas State CIEDAR is open for business. So Mark, we gotta go. Unfortunately, we could be here all day, but any parting thoughts on are you guys gonna be at Distributech?
We are going to be at Distributech, so we are looking forward to continuing this journey with all the utilities, and really find us in all of these institutions and events that we participate. Right, we're going to be at Distributech. We are going to continue working with CIEDAR, and really looking forward to engage on projects there to start testing, and not only demonstrating but testing new technologies, right? Growing our ecosystem. We are going to welcome everybody that wants to see how they can leverage their technologies and their solutions on 900, and pushing forward, continuing the education and the momentum at ABBA. So it's a bright future for us. We are very excited about the possibilities.
Very interesting, Mar. Thank you so much for coming on the program.
Mar, thank you for being here today. All the best, and we will sign off with a tune from the band Eagles, Live in the Fast Lane. All right, here we go. Thank you, Mar. Thanks everybody for joining today. The recording will be available soon on the 512cmg.com website for everybody to listen